Okay, today we're going to talk about complex sentences because we are reading a text that is indeed very complex and has some sentences that feel like they never end. In fact, there are some sentences that are entire paragraphs. So, in order to understand sentences, we have to think about what goes into a sentence. So, at its very basics, a sentence is a subject plus a verb plus a complete thought. So sentences can be incredibly simple. We can say, I run. That's a sentence. It's a subject of I, a verb of run, and it's a complete thought. I run. This is not a true statement for me, but it is a sentence. Now, if we start to become more complex, then we start getting phrases into our sentences. And so I want to talk about the hierarchy within grammar, which is to say, at the very basic level, we have words, and we all know what words are. These are the smallest components of a sentence. Okay, we know that. Phrases are groups of words that carry meaning together, essentially. And clauses are groups of words with a subject and verb. Okay, so words, phrases, and clauses are what are kind of the building blocks of language. So if I wanted to build a what is considered a simple simple sentence, but it is still has like phrases in it, I could include a noun phrase that's the subject. So the dog wearing a sweater, and then I have a verb, and I could just say pants. Okay, and we understand the dog is like panting, not that he's wearing the sweater and pants. And so the dog wearing a sweater, pants. We've got a noun. Okay, we've got a subject that consists of a noun phrase. So we'll underline our subject. Okay, and specifically the noun in this sentence is the dog. Okay, the dog pants. What is the dog doing? It is panting. Right, and so we have subject and then our verb. We'll go ahead and make that bold so we understand that. After we have kind of that simple subject, we can also talk about adding in other phrases and clauses. So as we get more complex, we may want to add to that. So the dog wearing a sweater. I'm going to just take my sentence and add to it. I'm going to go down here so I can make a sentence more and more complex, right? The dog wearing a sweater with a tiger painted on the front. Pants. And then I can say loudly in the restaurant. Things are getting weird in this sentence, okay? I admit it. So the dog wearing a sweater with a tiger painted on the front, pants loudly in the restaurant. So we've got lots of components here. The dog wearing a sweater with a tiger painted on the front, that is still our subject. And so we have this long drawn out sentence, and we've got a few different things going on. So we have a prepositional phrase with a tiger painted on the front. And so really we actually have two, we have a prepositional phrase within a prepositional phrase. And so these prepositional phrases are telling us more about the dog. So if I say which dog, then it's going to tell me it's the dog with a tiger painted on the front. So when we're talking about adjectives, adjectives will tell us what kind or which one. Okay, that's what it will answer. Which dog, what kind of dog. If it answers that question, if it's telling us about the noun in the sentence, then it's an adjective. Loudly is an adverb. It's telling us about the panting, and then in the restaurant tells me, this is another prepositional phrase, but it's serving a different purpose. Why is it serving a different purpose? Because in this case, it's telling me where the panting is taking place. So an adverb will tell me where, when, how, or in what way. Okay, and so these are different phrases that are adding to the complexity of the sentence. And so that's just kind of the beginning point. And then I'm going to jump in with a little bit more complexity with different types of phrases. Get a complex sentence together. I want to add that for an adverb, it also answers to what extent. I missed that. And then as we move forward into looking at complex sentences, I want you to think about a couple of different signals to identify information that you can look at kind of in pieces or potentially take out. So if you look at commas, two commas together often offset information and it's adding. So it's usually unnecessary, or I should say it's often unnecessary. Two commas aren't necessarily putting information that's doesn't need to be in the sentence, but it's something to kind of signal you. If there's two commas, you got to look at it and see, is it just descriptive? And commas can do other things as well, so it can, be part of a coordinating conjunction and so on. And then subordinating words are something else to look out for. Subordinating words are things like if, when, after, and there's a ton of them. It is a word that takes an independent clause, a sentence, and makes it dependent. It turns it from being independent to dependent. So I'll give you a quick example. If I take my very simple sentence from earlier, I run, and I add a subordinating word to it, I no longer have that independent clause, that complete sentence, I run. It goes to, so if I say, if I run, all of a sudden there's this lack of completeness to the sentence. Well, if I run, what happens? Okay, so I have to finish that. So if I see in a sentence, if, after, when, any word that takes what was a sentence, I run, and makes it dependent, if I run, now I need the rest of the sentence, then I know that there's a whole nother part that has a subject and a verb. So I could say, if I run, I will be sore. If I run is the dependent clause that has subject I, run, verb, and then has the I will be sore, which is the independent clause. I is the subject, will be is the verb, and sore is the object, or the adjective, excuse me. And so that's something to look out for. And then coordinating conjunctions are just something to be aware of. Coordinating conjunctions are fanboys. If you don't know what that is, it's for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And so those can serve a couple different purposes. They can be combining independent clauses, or they can be listing. So if we have, I'm going to go to the store and buy bananas, bread, and peanut butter, then the and is just part of a list. And then lastly, something just to look out for, just look for descriptions. If there are parts of a sentence that are solely descriptive, they aren't necessary for the heart of the sentence. And if we get rid of that extra descriptive information, we can understand the sentence in a more simple form, and then we can bring back that description to better understand that simple sentence. And then a couple other notes just to help you if you're in a sentence and you're trying to figure out what the verb is and you know what the subject is, you can say subject and then ask the question what. So for my simple sentence, I what? I run. Run is the verb. If I know what the verb is, but I don't know what the subject is, then I will ask this question. Who runs? The subject in that case is I run. So that will give us a clue. Now let's jump into an actual sentence. I'm going through this kind of essentially for the first time, so I'm grappling with it with you, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So, for having lived long, I have experienced many instances of being obliged, by better information or fuller consideration, to change my opinions, even on important subjects, which I once thought right, but found to be otherwise. For is a word that's just transitional, and so this transitional word isn't necessary. And with unnecessary information, I'm going to go ahead and just cross it out. Having lived long is also information that is extra. It's telling me about I. What have I done? I have lived long. And so it's extra information. We can cross it out in terms of just trying to figure out what the sentence means. Why is it important? Because this person is establishing that they have experience. Okay, so now let's get to the next part. I have experienced many instances of being obliged, which I have already marked off a phrase here. So that was actually me, not the sentence. So let me just take it out so that way you can see its original form. So I have experienced many instances of being obliged. So we're looking for that feels like a sentence, and I hope that it feels that way to you as well. And I'm just going to take this and go, okay, if it feels like a sentence, where's my subject? Where's my verb? Well, usually it's easier to find the verb first. So let's talk about verb. So if I go, I have experienced, okay, there's my verb, and I want to know my subject. So who or what has experienced? Well, I have. So in this case, the subject is I. And then what comes after, and I should add this to our little phrase here as well. What comes after this, if something is receiving the action of the sentence, it is an object. So if I have verb, and then I ask the question, what, it will equal the object of the sentence. Okay, not always is what comes after the verb an object, but in this case, it works out that way. So I have experienced what? Many instances of being obliged. Okay, so if I want to break that down even further, I really am just getting to I have experienced instances. Now, the words many and the phrase of being obliged are all descriptive. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those in pink to just say, okay, these are descriptive phrases. Now, they're not really distracting, so I'm not going to completely cross them out, and they're kind of useful. But if I want to get to really pare this sentence down to its essential parts, I can get rid of those. Okay, so I have experienced many instances of being obliged, by better information or fuller consideration, to change my opinions. Now, before we move on from there, I got 2 commas here, and I don't have a conjunction. So I'm thinking that this information is probably extra. And one way that I can look at that is say, if I just take that information out, do I still have what sounds like a flowing sentence? So if I say, I have experienced many instances of being obliged to change my opinions even on important subjects. Yeah, that sure sounds like it could be eliminated. Okay. So this is really telling us more about the being obliged part. But it's not necessary. We're going to cross it out. I think it'll help us to better understand the sentence. Okay, so then we have to change my opinions even on important subjects, which I once thought right, but found to be otherwise. Okay, so we have another comma. What's happening with this comma? This comma is then followed by a word that is like a connection word. It's a like a transitional word. And what it's doing is it's signaling to me that there's some information here that's being added on. And I'm going to look at that and say, okay, if I were to take all of that out, if I were just to remove that, would my sentence still make sense? So let's read it down to what we have. I have experienced many instances of being obliged to change my opinions even on important subjects. Yeah, that's the sentence. That is the sentence. All the extra pieces are extra information. So to clarify the last part of the sentence, which I once thought right but found to be otherwise, I just want to go through what that is. So the word which is actually something we call a relative pronoun, and it is the idea of being a relative pronoun. When we know what a pronoun is, it takes the place of a noun. And relative, I just like to think of it as it relates the idea that follows to the noun that precedes. So the noun that precedes is subjects. And the word which relates it to this idea of I once thought right but found to be otherwise. Okay, and so this is a relative pronoun, and it's really telling us more information. So it's serving as like a description. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it like it's a description. But just that's the function of the word which. So looking out for all of those aspects, commas, subordinating words, coordinating conjunctions, descriptive phrases, hopefully all of those things will help you kind of pare down the sentence. And we're going to go ahead and apply this to some of our reading.